squat, squat her crotch or canoodle in her bosom, always flitting from one place to the other, chirping things she pretended to make sense of. Now it's gone down the long and shady alley, from whose bourne no traveller returns, like. Shame on you, O naughty powers of darkness. Old Grim Reaper who gobbles all the goodies, bagged a bird of a particular importance. Oh dear me, poor old Tweety, what a bummer. It's your fault that my little love is blubbing and her eyes are all pinky rimmed and puffy. Thank you, Anne.
So it's Robin.
I have 3 poems which are rather different, but I think they're all very much Anne. The first is Gathering Frogs. I am gathering frogs in a builder's bucket. Every year they come up from the valley bottom by Snicket and Ginnell, heading towards the ponds where they were spawned. They go to breed. They are unstoppable. Some cannot wait. They shuffle, couple towards the patently unattainable. Some of them poke Joan their jellied bellyful into the gutter. Crossing Victoria Street, their chances plummet at an exponential rate. Cars, rough boys who boot them skywards, drunkards who hiccup and splat. Here I come with my back bent, plucking soft living peaches from the tarmac, spiriting small souls into my bucket. Swing low, sweet bucket. Tip out the wet load here on the banks of the pond Jordan. First, they lie as they land. Then the water calls and they begin to move in their ones and twos, lolloping forward little by little by little. Now they begin their song, the throaty allelulias rising like tossed cloth caps. Those rescued yesterday rise to the surface, underpinning the anthem with rough praise. Do you hear them, Lord? Can you see them? Are you well pleased? The second one is New Fruit, and is a sonnet. In the last knockings of the evening sun, Eve drinks Calvados. Elsewhere in her life, she has played muse and mistress, bitch and wife. Now all that gunpoint gamesmanship is done. She loves the garden at this time of day. Raising her third glass up to God, she grins. If this is her comeuppance for her sins, it's worth a little angst along the way. A fourth. Again the cork's slow, squeaky kiss. If, as the liquor tempts her to believe, the Lord has one more Adam up his sleeve, he's going to have to take her as she is. Out in the garden in a dressing gown, breathing old apples as the sun goes down. As far as I know, Mallard doesn't appear in any of her collections, but was in an anthology of poems about birds called No Space But Their Own. Mallard. Beady-eyed wide boy, cheerful polymath who's never quite as good at anything as anybody else. Oh, he can fly, but not as the swift flies, not as the kestrel. He gets there, though, in his own fashion. And he can swim, but not as the swan swims. Even his scavenging is overshadowed by that of gulls, his small predations by the lordly heron. His are little skills, thoughtlessly exhibited ad infinitum in his own idiosyncratic world. I asked him once, Mallard, my feathered friend, what do you do exactly? What are you for? His reply was a wink and a wet shrug. Oh, you, Squire, bit of this, bit of that, bit of ducking and diving. Grab what's going. Know what I mean, Squire, eh? Know what I mean?
You're muted, Harvey.
Okay. As I was saying, I have the new list, so I'll read from that. I'm not in the event that I botch a name, because I don't know how good I'm going to be at pronouncing some of the Irish names. Please forgive me. Our next reader is Shanor Pugh.
Sheena.
Do that one again.
Sheena.
Sheena.
Hi.
Okay. Well,
Hi.
one. Where are you here?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm not sure that I can see you.
I can see you. We can hear you.
Oh,
Just
yes.
talk.
Oh, there you are. Okay. You're right to the left of me.
Okay.
Right. Okay, fine.
Okay. I knew Drysdale when I lived in Wales. I was teaching at the University of Glamorgan on a master's creative writing course, and Anne used to come to read to our students. Many writers came to read to our students, but they always loved it when Anne came because she had such a wonderful sense of humour. You weren't ever going to leave one of her readings feeling bored or depressed, which cannot be said for all readers. Apart from her sense of humour, she also had a terrific ability to fix on exactly the right word, the right phrase, the right image. And never more so, I think, than in this poem from her collection Vanitas. A sea view. There are crisp legs spread all over the balcony, pink and white, artless, and opened up to the sky, detached and ownerless, posing perpetual questions. Whose bones? Whose charnel house? Whose wasted crusts? The white bird tumbles clumsily out of the sun, carrying a small crab, like a novelty reticule, held ostentatiously in its tight tweezer beak, every leg pedalling, each one on his unicycle, all giving it getaway with nowhere to go. The bird lands, looks at me, arch, inscrutable, casting the crab onto the littered bitumen, then tossing it onto its back and making a meal of it with a single jackhammer blow to its savoury guts. With a flutter of feathery napery over the table, it takes French leave of the dregs of its quivering breakfast, upending the carapace like an empty eggshell, leaving the bony soldiers to die in the sun. And Drysdale. After I moved to Shetland, we kept in touch via Facebook, and she was the most amazing correspondent. She had this a wicked wit without being in the least unkind, and we developed a kind of ongoing joke about dragons and wyverns. What had happened was that I used to post medieval pictures of dragons and rabbits, and some stickler for accuracy, or as we say, pedant, would very often say, "Oh, that's not a dragon, that's a wyvern," or "That's not a rabbit, its ears are too long, it's a hare." And it got to where if Annie thought somebody was being overly informative or pedantic, she would say things like, "Are you sure that isn't a wyvern?" And it was so like her, so very much her. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I also had a correspondence with her, and she would rib me about writing her using the name that I write under, which is Red Rider, not, you know, my given name. And so she would call me the one or call me the other. And I'm still not sure what to call myself, but I certainly will miss her. Our next reader is Peter Richards. Peter?
Here I am.
Okay.
Yes, it's an alternative proposal, which sorry, getting my voice here, which has an epilogue, and I'm going to read the epilogue first. So it's a prologue. Plaid Cymru, the Independent Wales Party, opposed the construction of a wind farm on Coety Mountain, claiming that it would benefit England more than Wales. They proposed instead that a people's cooperative should take over the sewers and that effluent from the community should run down a series of steep steps so as to generate electricity on its way to the sea. However, they failed to explain the trigonometry. Well, Anne has not explained the trigonometry, but she has given us a poem to celebrate this not very well thought out plan. To be sung to the tune Aurelia. If only I could sing, it would sound a lot better, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay? I had to stand up, makes my lungs work. Each daily dump is vital, each tiny tinkle's great. More power to the people, each job will generate. When droppings are donated, each loyal Welshman smiles. If you are constipated, then God will give you pile. The spirit of the Chartists shall not cry out in vain, for Cambrian Pisatists will strike the porcelain. And all along our plumbing, from Todger, Twat, and Tush, the power will be humming with every mighty flush. We shall not, whoa, skip the line there. We shall not be affrighted when Britain's blackout comes. We shall not be benighted while Welshmen still have bums. For we will eat jalfrezi, then bold Glendower's name. And then we'll crap like crazy and light the lamps again. Oh, hear Rebecca's daughter proclaim these fighting words. The Sahis have seized our water, they shall not take our turds. When there's no windy weather and fossil fuel fails, then we will squat together and we will shit for Wales. Thank you. Thank Annie. There's one more here. The Pissing Cow. I explain my choice of these because us potty mouths have to play to our strengths. The pissing cow, indeed, for the neighbour who calls me this behind my back and thinks I don't know. It is evident that you know little about cattle, or you would not have chosen that particular term of abuse. Poor soul, you will never have felt on your upper lip the natural effervescence of fresh milk, or heard the rough music of ruminant digestion in stereo, lying in straw between two cows. Never watched swing-titted milkers in full sail, distributing manurial largesse. Piss elegant she is, the pissing cow. Her tail curlicued like a little finger quivering in the cloud of fragrant steam rising from Earl Grey in bone china. See the golden stream pour over the lip of her pouting vulva onto the soft brown saucer that waits to catch it like a Yorkshire pudding, calling for the kiss of gravy. Who would not appreciate the slap and trickle of the artistic statement that she's making, while her companions drop their slow dung round her in an ongoing ripple of restrained applause? There are three things, friend, that you should learn from this. That there is beauty in all things that are without pretension. That a poet only gains by association with them. That there are sadder things in life than a pissing cow.
Okay.
I would like to give some tribute to Anne as well, but we all know her. And somehow I only knew her online, and yet we really all feel we know her. And I think that is the best thing I can say. Thank you all.
It's true. Absolutely true. And next up, we have Robert Schechter.
Yes, hi.
Okay.
The first poem of Anne's I ever read is called The Red Mud of Lydney, and it's still maybe my favorite one of hers, but among them. On a field trip to Gloucestershire not long before he died, the tired leaves of autumn were committing suicide to the threnody of drizzle, which was clearly in cahoots with the red mud of Lydney that was sucking at my boots. We were following our colleagues to the villa on the hill, with Philip in the wheelchair doing splendidly, until we heard a noise behind us, such as speedy people make, and turned and saw a 4x4 that wished to overtake. The cure for our predicament was well within his gift. His flatbed trailer might have offered us a lift, but he gave the horn an irritated toot, as if to say that he was heading up the hill and we were in the way. The man in the Land Rover didn't try to pass. He made me lug the wheelchair through the lateral morass. He watched me as I struggled, and he wouldn't meet my eye, just raised his own to heaven with a hissy little sigh. It took me every ounce of strength to haul it off the track, and I knew as I was doing it, I'd never haul it back. He found a gear and roared away and left us helpless there. Oh, I would have pulled my forelock if I'd had a hand to spare. Each time I see the wheelchair standing empty in the shed, still muddily encrusted in that special shade of red, it galls me and appalls and transports me back again to the loneliness and hopelessness of Lydney in the rain. And a more recent one, at least to me, to me, it's more recent. These are favorite poems of mine which I encounter first online, and because I like them, I I keep copies. I don't know which book of hers this one's in. I couldn't quite place it. 19th of July, 1944. That was the day when there was too much sky. Nobody came to get her out of bed, and when she went by herself to the window, yesterday's everything had disappeared. Everybody was busy and shouting, and when at last the feet came on the stairs, something inside insisted she should run across the room and jump back into bed. Someone came in and sat down on the bed and said the little boy across the road wouldn't be coming over for a while. He and his mom had to go away. He wanted her, they said, to have Blue Bear to keep for him. But Blue Bear had got wet, although it wasn't raining, and he smelt of the fireplace first thing in the morning. Alone again, she went back to the window. How odd of Raymond when he went away to take his house with him, but leave Blue Bear. She didn't like that there was too much sky. And that's it.
Thank you. Penelope Shuttle.
Hello. I knew Annie years ago, but over the last few years, we always met up at the Ledbury Poetry Festival with Angela and with Leslie. And it's lovely to be able to share her poems tonight. She had such a gift for scrutiny of popular culture. And this is her poem about the filming of Lord of the Rings. Like most of her poems, it's a poem only Annie would have written. Bugger this for a game of soldiers. And then she has a little prose note. The story has it that when the computer wizards fabricated the battle scenes for Lord of the Rings, the director decreed that each figure should be programmed to act as an individual. And during the first conflict, some of them ran away. Hiding in the enhanced hills of the Antipodes, we are not doing too badly, all things considered. We have each of us chosen to step outside the picture and watch it dispassionately without benefit of popcorn. We happy few, we voluntary outtakes, virtually indestructible, having no substance, sought out our several ways into this haven. Like legionnaires, we do not discuss our reasons. We are a small fistful of hand-knitted fictions with fellowship programmed digitally into our pixels. Having been created utterly true to ourselves, we cannot now be false to one another. And so we fadge, we orcs, elves, wraiths, and rohirrim, carousing round the fire in a ring. And second poem, very different mood. The last lamp. I am the last lamp at the end of the street, a light-headed pole with a pool at my feet. I can't relocate even though I might like to. I'm something substantial to padlock your bike to. I'm ballsy and feisty and bubbly and bright, and I wear a brave face through the long winter night, a bold boulevardier, flamboyant flaneur, a keeper, a peeper, a one-eyed voyeur. Like a daffodil bulb, I come on in the dark, becoming the star to each wandering bark. Yet I limit the vision of all who pass by, for I highlight the pavement by hiding the sky. To men a convenience, to dogs a urinal. I'm photogenic and phallic and final.
Thank you. Oh my. Next up, we have Peter Daniels.
Hello. I've knew Anne really online, though I met her once at Ledbury and once in London, but she was definitely part of everything somehow. I'm reading the two halves of Clearing the Decks. 1. The Skip. See, I have loaded up the borrowed skip. Its hollow belly has been satisfied. Now, haulier, come and take it to the tip, but not before you've spread a net to hide the sheer enormity of what I've done. The mighty pile in shameless disarray teeters like Ossa upon Pelion, the cruel truth of what I've thrown away, not books or tools, both those are sacrosanct, but so much other once beloved stuff that like an extra tooth had to be yanked because it wasn't relevant enough. To see the back of it should bring relief, and not this synthesis of guilt and grief. And the second part is called The Bonfire. First, savour the fugitive whiff of it, sneaking out furtively from the echoing can. Long ago lamplight, now a chance for change by way of a little curative mischief. Burdened with so much arbitrary preciousness to which I can give no guarantee of forever, I will make it all into one magnificent safety beyond all argument. I will anneal regret. Liberally, liberally, I have sprinkled the sacrifice with the scented blessing of the unbreakable promise, the coming together of the various to make the last, the match, the scratch, the flash, the flick, the roar.
And next we have Leslie Ingram.
Hello, everybody. I knew, well, I've known Annie for quite a while, really. I'm going to read this one first. This is from a book about Real Newport, called Real Newport. It's a guidebook to Newport from a series of books called Real Wherever. And she said to me once that when she gave the manuscript in, she got the impression it wasn't quite what they were expecting. It is not one of those guidebooks that tells you to look at this and go there and look at this. It's really, you follow her discoveries of the town, and it's really interesting. The first poem I'm going to read is called In Search of Lost Proust. And that's because in Gwent, there was this mystery. It's in the chapter called The Mystery of the Wrought Iron Gate. And her beloved, Philip, used to say that Proust was buried beyond the gate in a cemetery there. And, you know, not a lot of people knew that. And she'd often say to him, shall we go in? And he'd say, oh, well, another day. Let's do it another day. Anyway. In Search of Lost Proust. You used to tell me that Proust was buried in Jewswood Cemetery, Newport, Gwent. Although I knew it was one of your wind-ups, like the mythical town of Dickhead, Minnesota, I always secretly hoped it was true. But I have found him now in Père Lachaise, irretrievably immured in black marble. I have dibbled a hole in the gravel next to his tomb with a Swiss Army knife and carefully peppered a drift of ashes onto the slightly sour earth underneath. Combing the small stones gently over you with grubby fingers, I am celebrating a fitting end to our folie à deux. and a fine way to win an argument. Yes, well, just fab. And the next one, I just could not read this, could not read this, if you like. It's because the subject of this poem agrees with me that if you get a piece of the best cheese ever, which is Wensleydale, other cheeses are available, and then you go and make an abomination of it by adding bits of apricot and bits of cranberry, it is a sin, frankly. So anyway, Ben Gunn weeps. Tell me, shipmates, do you perchance have cheese aboard this vessel? When they said they did, he wept a little, and when he was asked to name his favourite, whispered, Wensleydale. And then he dreamed again, this time with hope. Now he could see the cheese, wrapped in its muslin, close crafted by a time-served artisan. Perhaps a little mould, as they unwrapped it, would fall like green tears on the wooden board. Oh, knife or wire? How would they cut his piece of 8, his piece of Wensleydale? He saw it falling painlessly away from the white, crumbling side of a soft cliff. He tasted it, one salty, nutty lump at a slow, timeless time. His fingers dabbed at its imaginary crumble, anticipating. But while he was away in paradise, the world had turned to show a sadder side. The predatory short-term interest in the financial sector had changed cheese, making it caper to a new hornpipe. Short shelf life and capricious innovation, all the cut corners of the swift turnover. Quest for the discretionary book. They brought a pallid slab, shrink-wrapped in plastic, sleek and damp and beshitten with cranberries. His toothless mouth rounded into a howl, and he wept with the grief of his great loss. Now, the thing about the cheese as well, there are 4 things, I think, that remind me of Annie. Cheese, Wensleydale, always. Roscoff, she wrote a few poems about, which is really one of my favourite places. Cryptic crosswords, which we have been saving and actually have a pile here ready to post to her that my husband cuts out from the paper. And this, Kir Royale. A few years ago, she came to Ledbury, she came to see us, and outside she brought some Kir Royale. She brought not cassis, which is what I normally have, but framboise, plus a bottle of lovely, lovely wine to go with it. There was a group of us and everybody else drank the wine, and we never really got a chance to have a proper Kir Royale. So I'm making an invitation. Next year, if you're in Ledbury at the Poetry Festival, come and see me at my house and we will toast Annie with a Kir Royale with raspberries. Cheers, everybody.
I must say something there about the beshitten with cranberries. There's a number of times that Leslie, Annie and I have been at Poetry Festival suppers and they bring it out and we're sniggering behind our hands because it's beshitten with cranberries. And I was at a weekend in Cumbria with Annie. We'd gone away for a singing weekend of all things with Muddy Pryor at her place in Cumbria. And on the final night, of course, they'd done this really fantastic supper. And then the cheese board came out. And there it was, beshitten with cranberries. And Annie and I were helpless with laughter and couldn't explain why. Because we can't say your cheese is beshitten with cranberries, but it was It just
Yeah.
kept filling up, didn't it, Leslie? It's just
There's a cheese man that comes here on a Saturday morning, and we always go and get cheese from his great big van. And he knows Wensleydale is my favourite. And he looks at me and he says, "Oh yeah, you don't like it, the shitting, do you?" I'm trying to get it into every cheesemaker's lexicon all over the world. Bit by bit.
I can't find it in Brooklyn. Wensleydale, the store that sold Wensleydale went out of business.
Oh, that's
Any I can get the Wensleydale, I can't. You know. Thank you, Nemo. Is Nemo?
You can hear me?
Yes.
All right. Do I feel lucky? I came across a slow worm in a wood. I saw it clearly, but a little late, making me stumble suddenly aside so that I wouldn't put a foot on it. The dog peered at it, but with little more than passing interest in a fellow creature. I picked it up to move it off the path, thrilled by the feel of it, smooth in my hand. I took delight in the blunt head of it, pushing between my fingers, the dry slide as it dripped from the safety of my grasp and took possession of the ground I gave it. I put leaves over it. It thrust its head up into daylight from a space between them. I blessed it with a single fingertip, and it ducked down and drizzled out of sight. That was a lucky day for pseudo-snakes. What if a different poet had been there? One with a good aim and a log to hand would have made short work of its loveliness. A different woman with a different dog, a squealer with a killer, might have put a noisy and uncomfortable stop to its uncomplicated innocence. It seems the end of everything depends upon which agent of apocalypse steps from the shadows when the chips are down. Savior or slaughterer, call heads or tails. I will spend no more time on hedging bets. Bring on the rapture. When the time is right, I'll take my chances, knowing as I do the arbitrary nature of salvation. Flipping through the books I have, trying to choose them, I can't believe how many poems Annie wrote imagining her own death, which is a really healthy endeavor, as I see it. This one's called Way to Go. Carriage return. They will collect me in a horse-drawn hearse, brought to the front door in the early morning. I hear it coming even though the street is strewn with straw to muffle its approach. Silently, and without a by your leave, they take me out and lay me on the bier, leave my achievement squashed into a lozenge, black-framed and draped behind me on the wall. And off we go, black hackneys, oar in hand, the leaders tossing as the wheelers nod. Black ostrich feathers on their headpieces, moving in sequence like a stripper's fan. Nobody sees me jump ship and turn back to steady the hand of the street urchin who scuttles forward with a battered bucket to claim the bounty of their sudden dung. I show him how to set his foot just right and shift the shovel with a single thrust to trap the reeking goodness up against it so as to get the beauty of it hot. Thanks.
Thank you.
And with me is
No, I know. He's up next. John Marcus.
Shall I get him there? Okay.
I'm going to read one about spam. Beautiful spam, so nearly meat. You came about as a wartime treat, with a pinch of pork and a hint of ham, and a whiff of austerity. Beautiful spam. Beautiful spam, who then would wish for snock or any funny fish, or flesh of bully, bull, or ram. Oh, meat of the multitude, beautiful spam. Beautiful spam, your pale pink prism, plonked on a plate with Platonism, stands for the grandeur of Uncle Sam, gift of America, beautiful spam. Beautiful spam, I thee exalt, sodium nitrite, fat and salt, the fair foundation of all I am, feast of obesity, beautiful spam. And the next one is quieter, a little more introspective. It's about Annie's bed, my bed. This is my roost, my place of same again. Just as sparrows plug themselves one by one into the ivy on the outer wall, I part accumulated layers of nocturnal comfort, sliding my worn self into the waiting slot carved by long use in old memory foam that can't forget, the one who comes like a devoted lover night after night into its bailiwick. This is the place that waits for me all day. I am an old knife, carefully restored to my allotted place in the canteen, and I will lie where I'm supposed to go, so that I know where I am to be found next time I need to use myself again. Thank you.
Well, we've had a ham and what is it, a spam and cheese sandwich. So next up is Julie Steiner.
Anne Drysdale joined the Eratosphere Online Poetry Workshop in February of 2009. And by that time, Margaret Griffiths, or M.A. Griffiths, also known as Grasshopper or Maz, to those at the Sphere, had stopped posting regularly. So Maz and Annie's tenure there had not really overlapped. When we learned of Margaret Griffith's death in September 2009, more than a dozen Spherians from 3 continents, including Janet Kenny, who had a message at the beginning of this reading, we gathered Maz's extant works from various online venues and arranged for their publication and promotion. And I became closer with Annie while working with her on these projects. And I had sent her a bunch of books when it was finally published so that she could share them with students, potential publishers of a selected. And for some reason, she felt that she owed me. And so she sent me her collected works. And among those books were 2 memoirs of her relationship with her beloved, Philip. One is titled by his medical record number 332256, and it contains this poem. And I will try to screen share because I'm a visual person and I like to see the poems. All right, a little bell. Maybe I can make this bigger. There we go. A little bell. A little golden bell. A little golden Christmas-looking bell with Santa on his sleigh, waving goodwill, while 6 wild reindeer rear into the sky, making a cunning little handle. If you take it between finger and thumb and give it the teeniest shake, it tinkles like baby's laughter, Such a pretty thing, and it is all for you. Nurse gave it to you to keep for as long as you need it. Nurse gave the bell to you because last night you had a paroxysm of vomiting that made green curtains run down all four walls and rang the help me bell, and no one came because the bell was broken. So you cried out at the top of your voice, begging for someone, anyone, to come. But cries of distress on the ward at night are constant and for the most part ignored. You lay ill and afraid, alone. Today, I asked if something could be done, and they brought you the little golden bell. I went back home and fetched a sleeping bag. I will be here tonight and every night because I don't believe in Santa Claus. Now, this one is, this poem's very dear to me because, sorry, I've been in a very similar ward situation with many family members. Why can I not stop sharing here? Okay. I've been accused of oversharing before. Yeah, I've had various medical adventures with my husband, my daughters, my mother-in-law, and for the same reason as Annie, I always camp out for as long as someone is staying in the hospital because I don't believe in Santa Claus either. 2 years after my elder daughter's heart transplant in 2013, my younger daughter and I had the opportunity to travel to London, and Annie graciously took the train from Wales to meet us at the National Gallery and show us some of her favorite paintings. And one of them was this one, and I'll attempt to screen share again. Okay. So this is the baptism of Christ. Here's John the Baptist. And here's this is God the Father, and this is the Holy Spirit, recognizable by the basically the pigeon feet. And so we had a good snicker in the National Gallery about this. Here's the rest of the artwork, and if you can just keep that in mind, here's the poem she sent a few years later and said, do you remember that the Holy Spirit in the National Gallery? I've written a poem about it. Oh, how beautiful are the feet. A meditation on the baptism altarpiece of Niccolò di Pietro Gerini in the National Gallery. Jesus is tall. John has to really stretch so as to tip his terracotta pot over the high head of the Son of Man. God's chuffed. He's just let go the Holy Spirit to send it plummeting headfirst from heaven. The kamikaze nosedive showcases its silly feet, two brown banana skins that stick out sideways from the fuselage, making me laugh out loud. Oh, Niccolò, what a fine thing to offer to the Lord. God's good at feet, a whiz at finishing the legs of birds. I've always loved the gnarly grabs of irritated chickens, the whisker digits of the wren, the soft, underdeveloped token feet of swifts. I grinned a bit at the lobed toes of coots until I watched one running on soft mud with her umbrellas spreading underfoot to take her safe across the top of it, turning to oars as she launched on the water. On the beaches of the Galapagos, the booby shuffles in his blue suede shoes as though nobody but his love is watching, despite the shadows of the looming cruisers and the susurrus of the clicking twitchers. To each, God gave according to its need, regardless of the flocks of jeering hooters. Lord, may the feet of earth I end up beneath lie light as the six that I've laughed at most, the coot, the booby, and the Holy Ghost. Now I did not know what twitchers were. And so I asked her about this. And this arrived in the mail. Let me find myself again here, sorry. She sent some to my daughter and me so that we would know what twitching bins are. For binoculars for watching birds is twitching. And it came in this nice little container. And I thought only Annie would be so thoughtful as to feel compelled to dispel our ignorance by going to all the trouble to send this thing internationally to San Diego. All right, I've got a few pictures I can share from that trip that I thought you might enjoy. This is Annie in the lobby of the National Gallery. They have this beautiful mosaic floor of the modern virtues, the modern muses. And you will see, I had to take a picture of her at humor. There she is in all her glory. Notice that humor is at the intersection of lucidity and folly, which I think is an intersection that Annie was very familiar with. And so I sent her this picture and she said, I'm very interested in the codpiece of my water bottle in that kangaroo pouch, which was also a characteristically Annie remark. So we laughed about the bottle boner quite a bit. This painting that she showed was one of her favorites. This is by Velázquez, and it shows Martha is working in the kitchen with this beautiful still life. And in the background is Mary, who had a cameo in the Slutfest poem, sitting at the feet of the bearded Jesus here. This is a light switch, which I did not notice until after I looked at the picture later. But and then she took this one of us. She said the ambassadors with the ambassadors. So this is me and my daughter and Holbein's ambassadors. And we had to go at the other angles to make the memento mori look appropriate. And then she insisted on taking this one of me. She said it was a contrast. I'm not so sure it was a contrast, but anyway, then she later sent, yeah, I'll show you another picture of her dog in a moment. Getting better at stopping sharing. Okay. So, although her tenure with Maz hadn't overlapped online, Annie often marveled that her own life and Maz's had overlapped in lots of interesting ways, even including a similar childhood stay in a seaside sanatorium for ill children. And Maz was, like Annie, an independent woman living alone with her beloved pets. Annie was struck by the fact that Maz's friend David Adkins was certain that she had passed away at least a month before her body was discovered, and she had had pets. So, well, you do the math. I'm sure that someone, wonderful. I'm glad that the reading early on in the reading was the If I Should Die poem, in which Annie imagined a similar fate for herself, possibly. But spoiler alert, sweet old Otis did predecease her. And I received an email from Annie saying, something sad happened. My old dog Otis, who has been my beloved companion for 15 years, has died. And I have been reading Maz's poems on the subject like letters of fellow feeling. We've howled together. And that made me think of you and how you are. A few days later, Annie sent me the poem that she had written about the loss of Otis. And if you're familiar with M.A. Griffith's poems, 5 Cans of Cat Food and Throwaway Lines, you'll recognize the inspiration here, but it's completely Annie. It's not derivative in any way. And I'll go ahead and share this. Doggone. Oh, he is dead now. The scruffy little dog with the extraordinary eyebrows. He's gone, taking his gaiety and his fine friendship. Passer-by, peering sideways through the window, can you see the sorrow in the quiet house? Snapshot of a world in the process of change. Bed tipped up, waiting to be put out of sight, along with the cushion that still whiffs of him. Future heartaches tucked under the furniture. Plate on the floor, gravy congealing, unlicked, just put down in a second of forgetting. Leads coiled like mooring ropes when a boat has sailed. Old cat expanding to fit the sudden space. Slippered ballerina cocking a stiff leg over a gone gate at the foot of the stairs. And here's a picture that she sent us of Otis since she couldn't bring him on the train to London with her. And on that, I'll end. Thank you.
Thank you. By the way, I guess in the dark in terms of how old was Anne when she passed, and do we know what she died from?
She had just had her 80th birthday.
80th?
Yeah. Didn't seem it at all. Her spirit was much younger than that. And she had been having treatment for heart problems for some time, which I don't think many people knew about. She talked to me about it. So, you know, there had been problems. She was on a number of medications.
Thank you. Thank you. Mark McConnell, you're our next reader.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I don't think you can see me. I'm not.
Not right now.
No, well, I don't seem to be on camera. I'm not being mysterious. The camera seems to be on the blink. So, so you're just gonna have to have audio, I'm afraid. I can't get my camera to work. Not sure why.
Okay, well, we have active imaginations.
You have imagination. I promise I'm not naked or anything. But so it'll be audio only. Well, I was going to say a few things, but I'm just going to say really that I'm really going to miss Annie. I met her once. She came up to my house for on a whim. She was very adventurous. We were online friends, and yeah, we just arranged that she would jump on a train from Wales to Shrewsbury, and she came to see me at my house, and we went to the pub, and we had a wonderful evening. It was very memorable, and I'm really going to miss her. So I'm going to read 3 poems, I think. This is about the Welsh sort of mummers tradition of the Mari Lwyd, which is the sort of hobby horse that comes on New Year's Eve to greet the new year. Mari Lwyd dances. Bone white, star bright, I have come to you tonight. I bear no malice, bring no sin. Open the door and let me in. I am the horse that used to be the pitman's drudge or the punter's chance, but benevolent death has set me free, and off I go on my crazy dance. I shall dance that dance from dusk till dawn, with the moon above and the road beneath. Having no hooves to drum my tune, I'll dance to the clatter of my teeth. My worldly goods are few indeed, 2 worn-out boots and a gunny sack, though these are the only things I need to dance to the edge of the world and back. But the dance is fast and the road is long, and sometimes I need to catch my breath, so I stop at your door and I sing my song of the old illusions of life and death. I'll sing it for you and then I'll knock. Here I am, O my next of kin, and you will turn the key in the lock to keep me out or bring me in. What you give, I'll always take. Drink your beer and eat your cake. Where I'm bound, I do not know. Open the door and let me go. The next one's called Solstice. Beautiful poem. The top is spinning slower. The sound changes. It lurches on the last part of its story, and those who know this are already grieving. Raven coughs like an old man in the morning, clearing his cluttered pipes so as to curse the need to rise for such a little day. Buzzard flies lower so that all can hear his oh, oh, oh against the sepia sky, his keening for the end of everything. The young owls have grown into their voices, left behind the strangeness of their breaking to hurl clear cries of loss at the early moon. Now the top teeters. Soon it will stop and fall, but only for a moment, just until the owner steps in to prevent its ending and set it singing on another spin. Okay, one more from the sublime to, well, the differently sublime. This is called Word Made Flesh. On the broad steps of the basilica, the feckless hopelessly hold out their hands, often with some success. The privileged lighten their consciences by a few pence on their way to receive the sacrament. On the 17th step, two beggars sit, paying no regard to the worshippers who file past on their way to salvation. They do not ask for alms. They are engrossed, skillfully masturbating one another. Most who have noticed this pretend they haven't. Some of the other beggars wish they wouldn't. Poor relief is incumbent on the rich, and by taking things into their own hands, they spoil the scene for everybody else. Our Lord said, "Silver and gold have I none, but such as I have give I thee." The words are here made flesh. With beatific sigh, one gives the other benison, slipping all that he has into the waiting hand of somebody who shares his human need. The newly shriven filter down the steps, averting their eyes from the 17th, where the first beggar, in a state of grace, works selflessly towards the second coming. Thank you. God bless, Annie. Cheers.
Thank you. Charlotte?
Yes, I'm here. I'm going to read, excuse me, 3 short poems. And the first one is in this book, Quaintness and Other Offences, which I love. I love the cover, I love the title, I love the poems. And actually, Annie gave it to me the first time I met her, which was, well, she signed it 2012, so it must have been in 2012. And like a lot of other people, I first encountered her on Eratosphere. And then, you know, I live in Los Angeles, but I go over to England usually every year. And I think Jane Osborne, who's here, organized a meeting with a group of us who were on the Sphere. And it was, I remember Jane, and I remember Annie, and I remember John Whitworth, who was still around then. And I cannot remember who else was there, but those 3 really stand out to me, and I'm very glad to know them all. And the poem I'm going to read, let's see, is called A Cat in the Garden. And I love cats, and I know that Annie recently took in a stray. And I realized that her very last post on Facebook was a picture of this cat. So that was kind of got to me.
Charlotte, you're muted.
Yeah, we lost your audio. Huh.
Try unmuting everybody.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah.
So everyone missed all I was saying. Did you all miss what I was saying?
Just the last bit.
the last 45
Okay,
seconds.
so you heard about Eratosphere and meeting Annie
Yeah.
and being given the book. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to read A Cat in the Garden because I know she, loved cats, or I love cats, and she had adopted one recently. A Cat in the Garden. Amid the torn upholstery of dead birds, old Tom goes carefully about his work. Digging in overstated pantomime, he plants his small, soft, aromatic turds. There, in his wisdom, he is sure will feed attenuated turf and willing weed, till in the fullness of slow funnel time, a jungle will arise to serve his need, wherein things small and succulent may lurk to satisfy his gentlemanly greed. It will obliterate the simpering sun and make a dark Valhalla for his soul when time takes its inevitable toll and all 9 linnet lunching lives are done. I especially love that last line. So that's one. And the next one is, I had to pick this one. It's called Election Fever. And I think I saw it on Hypertext, and I also saw it on the Sphere. It just popped up. I was searching it because I thought, was it in a book or what? And it was the Sphere in 2017. And I realized that was around the time when, what's her name? Theresa May, the Prime Minister, called an election to try and boost Brexit, but I gather it didn't work, although Brexit happened. So I thought, well, and this poem on the Sphere has started off a long, very hilarious thread. If you want to track it down, it was just, I was in stitches, But Election Fever is also based on sea fever, or rather it mimics sea fever in its rhyme and its meter. And there are some little hints of sea fever in the poem, some of the phrases, Sea Fever by John Masefield. So I'm sure, I suspect at least most English people would know that poem. Let's see, was I going to say anything else? Just one thing. I was struck by the fact that he is yearning in his poem, Sea Fever, he's longing to go back to the sea. And she, in hers, she kind of turns it around, and she's very reluctant to go to the polls and vote, but she does. So Election Fever, and also we're all in a fever here, it's the election coming out, so it all seemed very appropriate. Election Fever. I must go down to the polls again, to the evangelical hall, and all the usual rigmarole in the rickety wooden stall, to the row of beady-eyed women with their separate jobs to do, the ticking off and the tearing off and the handing the blank to you. I must go down to the polls again, to the pencil on a string, and the careful kiss in a special box that doesn't change a thing, and the sucking of teeth and the half-belief that just this once it might, and the hollow laugh as I fold it in half, hoping I got it right. I must go down to the polls again to make my usual mark, though my heart sinks and my head thinks, oh, bugger this for a lark. But down I'll go and the flag I'll show as a citizen of the realm. And all I ask is a tight ship and an honest man at the helm. That really got me. Yeah, won't say any more. Anyway, I really like that one. So, and finally, I'm going to read, this is another one, and I'm not sure when she wrote it or if it's in a book, maybe people know. It's called, and I saw it on Facebook, The Shadow of the Moon. And I'm just going to read very quickly the little blurb that she put above it. She said, my friends across the Atlantic have just enjoyed a solar eclipse. I found myself remembering the one we had here in 1999. My late husband was terminally ill, but a brilliant team of doctors had won him a few more years. We watched together. Excuse me. The Shadow of the Moon. Oh, what the hell, we said, and did the thing without protection. Risky undertaking. With our bare eyes, we watched the sun's eclipse, reflected in the surface of the pond. Wet blanket clouds had shackled its full power. It lay in the water, Achilles' shield, dull, sunken silver. Then a dozen-eyed pond swallows gurgitated center stage, chasing a drift of midges, shattering the picture beyond mere representation. Matisse, Cézanne, and all the broken light shimmered into a glorious, soundless noise. I turned to you to share the glee and saw the first shadow of pain crossing your face. You hid it well, no sooner there than gone. The cloud lifted, the sun was back again. The eye retreated into the dark place under the lilies. Something had ended, something had begun. Thank you. Okay.
Good. Chris, you're up next.
Thank you. Thank you, Harvey. A lot of us here today have an affinity for light verse. Annie certainly did. And so did the late John Whitworth, to whom she dedicated this poem, The Case for Light Verse. Beside the epic, with its long tradition of mythic reference and erudition, darling of bards po-faced and reverential, light verse seems horribly inconsequential. There is no literary substance to it, no lasting value. Any fool can do it. Take up the burden that distorts your soul, crack it and tip it out into a bowl, discard the yolk, and then with merry vigor, whip up the white and add a bit of sugar. This is a recipe that can't go wrong. A little biscuit melting on the tongue, tickling the idiot's fancy like a feather, making him laugh and clamor for another. No one expects us amiable asses to seek to reach the peak of Mount Parnassus. Therefore, dear heart, let us write fast and louche, and give the common man his amuse-bouche. Write light, let rip with a poetic fart. That way they may conclude we have no heart. But those who really matter will know better. Now, in that poem, we hear Annie discoursing on light verse. In this poem, we see her acting out a comic scenario. The poem is titled Between Dryden and Duffy. And between Dryden and Duffy is where Drysdale comes in the alphabet. And that's where Annie liked inserting copies of her books onto bookshelf stores, in stores that unaccountably failed to carry her works. So this poem does have some two countries divided by a common language issues. For those who don't live in the UK, Ottakers, Hammocks, Hatchards, and Waterstones are all bookstore chains, and Waitrose is a grocery chain. So a Waitrose bag is the functional equivalent of a Stop and Shop bag or a Trader Joe's bag. Between Dryden and Duffy, that's where I look in every one of them. Ottakers, Hammocks, Hatchards, Waterstones, finding my book displayed in none of them. Do I descend to star-defeated moans? Not I. With an assumed short-sighted stoop on, I check the coast is clear to right and left. Then, with a Waitrose bag held slightly open, as if in readiness for petty theft, I make my hand into a living axe which parts the volumes at a single stroke. Then with my fingers, I enlarge the cracks and slip one in like an unscripted joke. Booksellers do not view this with delight. It wrecks their paperwork and serves them right. And I will finish with a poem in a different emotional register. I approached this one with some trepidation because I actually saw and heard Annie read this at a Carmine Street Metrics event. When I have fears. When Keats had fears that he might cease to be before he'd written all his mind could hold,
He recognized that his infirmity might rob him of the chance of growing old. The lucky youngster never lived to see coevals gradually lose their grip on memory, on personality, and the last precious dregs of scholarship. He never got to watch the tragedy of shared affairs no longer making sense between good friends, nor feel the absentee tottering into total nescience. So he could not have understood that what I'm most afraid of is that I might not. Well, Annie, you got what you wished for. You left us before your pen had finished gleaning your teeming brain, but what you wrote during your time here, what you shared with us, was magnificent. And we are grateful to you for it. We're grateful to have known you.
Absolutely. And lastly, we have Angela Franz, who was kind enough to assist me in setting this up, and who was more personally familiar with Annie than I didn't have the fortune to be.
Was there somebody else that wanted to read? Basil. At the beginning, Basil said he wanted to read something.
I don't see him here, if I'm not mistaken.
He was here, but he may have left by now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I consider Annie to be my best friend. She said that of me, which was a great honour. She came to stay with me quite often. We would go away together sometimes, and shared new poems with each other and worked through them together. And I'm not going to say any more. I won't be able to read. So I wanted to read first the decimal sequence turn, which has 4 decimers and has been published in a couple of books. And Nemo published it in a pamphlet called Turn. And I just hear Annie in every line of this. First turn. The cuckoo's found another note. It's there between the cuck and oo. A little hiccup creeping through and catching in its glaxon throat. An unexpected antidote to all the two-tone calls to mating, fluttering and fornicating. It celebrates the cuckoo's knowing the year is turning, spring is going, and summer and the south are waiting. Second turn. Season of weeds and easy roses, with everything alive and growing and no apparent thought of going. The only puzzle it proposes, a Parthian shot before it closes, is how the spider leaps the gap. The Sept the silver booby trap across the path beside the river to touch my face and make me shiver, knowing I've done another lap. Third turn. Fruition. I eschew the race to beat the creatures who would steal the makings of an easy meal. Instead, I give them living space and hope thereby to gain in grace. For I have fruit and they have not, so I will share my garden plot with all small things that come to glean, secret places in between, softness and the whiff of rot. Last turn. A mean wind makes the dead leaves fly, and drizzle makes the bonfire spit expletives at the cheek of it. The year is tired and so am I, but nonetheless our hopes are high. So I will dig my garden deep and tend it well until I sleep, in my own turn beneath the sod, keeping my covenant with God by pissing on the compost heap. And the next one is, I suppose you call it light. I just find it really sums up a delightful silliness. When she felt able to be silly, it was lovely. Today I am walking like Baryshnikov. From the lounge door across to the bay window, where I will stop, half turn, linger a little with most of my weight lifted on one leg. Then I'll heft half of it onto the other hip and set off back again, the balls of my feet almost, but not quite, kissing the carpet. A mobile drawl, solitary larceny, but not, God forbid, for my own benefit. When I have perfected it, I will share it. move beautifully among trudging people, tempting them into surreptitious theft, fluid improvement of their stiff condition. There they will all be, heads up and supple. Oh, you will know that I have been among them. They'll be the legacy of my life's work. Small men, short legs, big arses, walking tall. And I want to finish with Going Light. I mean, I know a lot of you have seen this because I did post on Facebook. I think is what we all hope happened, is that she went light, which I like to think she did. They call it going light, the loss of substance that goes with the failing of the spirit when the end comes. My old dog went light just before he died. His thin bones whispered in his hairy skin and went to sleep. And all that was left of him was the light that faded slowly as his eyes went dim, the other light. Going light, light going. It was as if I had perceived a sort of sense in it for a moment. Two kinds of light, making an hourglass laid on its side between weight and darkness, the shape of dying. Death is the snapping of the narrow neck, in between substance and oblivion, and that is all. And as you come near to the glass isthmus, I wish for the breaking to be gentle. Go light, my love.
I thank you. And I thank you all for joining us. If anyone has any comments or additional remarks that you want to say, by all means, do so.
I just want to say, Robin reading that Gathering Frogs poem reminded me that the first time I read that poem, I told Annie about a town in Massachusetts, the town of Amherst, where Emily Dickinson used to live and quite near where I live. They have a street with two little salamander tunnels built by the town under the road so the salamanders can get to the mating ground that they need to get to on the other side of the road. And for those tunnels were built in the late years of the last century. And before those tunnels were built, there were volunteers who would go out during salamander mating season, spawning season, whatever season salamanders have, would go out and stop traffic on that road and conduct salamanders across the street. I told Annie about those people. She was delighted to hear that she was not the only nutter of that type in the world. And I was delighted to be able to share that with her.
Well, I've always aspired to be a salamander crossing guard, you know. So.
Just outside Cheltenham, where I live, there's a reservoir, and toads cross the road to the reservoir. And at toad crossing season, there is actually a road sign that goes up, you know, a proper government road sign, triangular one with a red border, which if people know British road signs, they know that means with a picture of a toad on it. And volunteers go along with their buckets, picking up the toads and help them across the road.
That's lovely.
Well, I think it'd be fair to say that we helped Annie across whatever road there is out there.
I do think everybody should unmute if they want to.
Oh yeah, by all means, you're not. Yeah, but you certainly do.
Jane, were you trying to say something? You're muted. She's Jane.
You can all unmute if you like.
Sorry, I've unmuted. Sorry, I'd just like to say that well, this has been wonderful tonight. Annie and I were good friends. We had lots and lots of very, very long phone calls. And of course we met as well several times. I especially liked Robert's reading of July the 19th, 1944, because it chimes with me, particularly because July the 19th is the day that I was born, although not quite 1944. I'm old, but I'm not quite that old. But the
and he still had that bear.
Pardon?
And he still had that bear. I've seen it.
Yes. You know, that poem just chimes me for that particular reason, along with so many of the things that she wrote. and said. And I'd just like to thank you all for reading. I just felt I wasn't able to do it. Just don't think I could have managed, but it's been lovely to hear you all reading her work. And we will miss her terribly. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, thank you, Harvey, and thank you, Angela, for organising this so fast, you know, and it all worked out beautifully. You know, I didn't know how you were going to do it, but you did. And I feel honoured to be here and, you know, chime in. And I mean, it's been great, actually, because, I mean, one thing is I feel like she's still here, you know. I mean, I just think, it's the weirdest feeling. I feel like she's paying attention, you know. And but I've managed to read a whole lot more poems because of you. You know, I went on hypertext and I was looking through my book and realizing there's still so much to read. I mean, she just, and she posted on Facebook all the time, like she'd just written something, and she, you know, I mean, she seemed to do it so easily, but probably, you know, not always so easily. But it's great that she's given us so much, you know. So
there was another collection almost ready, and she'd chosen the cover for it. I don't know whether her publisher's going to do something with it or not. I'll have to find out.
Okay, well, I hope that'd be great.
You can say something, Leslie.
Well, it's well, nothing sort of nothing linked. It's just that when I was at school in the sixth form, they used to have the Yorkshire newspapers in, and I used to read her column when I was. I used to love it, absolutely love her writing, and so I can't believe that I actually got to meet her and know her. You know, I just used to love it.
That was a weekly column she did in the Yorkshire Evening Post.
Yorkshire Evening Post.
And that's when she was running a hill farm as a single parent. And she was writing about farm life.
And it was brilliant. It was just so interesting and easy to read and witty. And you can imagine the style of it. And I was just lovely. I just thought it was lovely. And I wanted to be a writer at the time. And I said to my careers officer, you know, when they say, what do you want to be when you leave school then? Let's just get this sorted. What do you want to be? So I said, very stupidly, oh, a poet. And they said, don't be silly. What do you really want to be? And it took me like 40 years after that to write a poem. But at the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, maybe I could do something like, you know, like Anne does. So I said, well, a journalist then, you know, because I said reporter. And I didn't mean a reporter. I meant a journalist where you wrote columns in newspapers and things. But because I said reporter, the careers officer said, oh, well, could you go? There'd been a big pit disaster near where I lived. And they said, could you go and interview all the people, the women waiting at the top of, you know, the pit head, waiting for the husbands to come up and whatnot? And I said, well, no, because we all thought it was appalling anyway that you did that. They said, well, you'll never be a writer, you'll never be a reporter then, will you? So it's just, you know, not very encouraging, really, were they? But Annie was sort of set that tiny, weeny little seed. I wish I'd met her all those years ago. I really do.
Well, better late than.
Yeah.
I suppose now is the time that somebody brings out the virtual Wensleydale.
The what? Sorry?
I have some real in the fridge.
And it's not beshitten.
It's not beshitten. Oh, God, no, it's not beshitten. But there is also, totally coincidentally, some fruitcake with it as well.
Oh, yes. That's the only way to eat it.
Yeah. Wensleydale, piece of fruitcake.
Yeah.
Sounds
That's
good.
the key.
In fact, it sounds like very good.
Oh, yes.
Well, I'm waiting for them to bring out a Wensleydale that's actually cheese flavoured.
That's fighting talk.
A little bit bland.
Well, actually, you know, you're not wrong, because a
Oh.
few years ago, when it was the proper Hawes, you know, creamery, it was gorgeous, but it's been taken over by some huge company, and now it's gone quite. It's not the same. It really isn't.
I
the
don't
same.
miss it. Then I shouldn't miss it. That nice flaky flavor.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite tricky to get
I feel better
that
for the
whole
lack
flavour.
of it now. You know, let them put
Maybe,
cranberries on it. Who
maybe
cares?
you could get some. Maybe you could get some posted.
But well, look, thank you all for coming, and
thank you, Harvey. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela.
My pleasure. And
Yes, thank you.
be well, everyone. And you know, stop, breathe, think sometime, and you know, we'll at least continue this.
Actually, Harvey, oh, I don't have a pen. When do you have your you know, I feel terrible. I used to go to Carmine Street Metrics all the time.
I have it usually once a month. It's been on a Saturday at 2 p.m. So that would be 11 for you, I guess.
Yes.
I mean, may or may not change that. Right now, it's just virtual. Every third or fourth month, I do a hybrid reading. When I can get space in a new library that's wired for sound, and you know, has any number of people lining up to host events there. But they've been nice to me. So I've read it, held readings there 2 or 3 times. They have a drop-down movie screen. You know, it's a lovely place. The place that I used to be at, which was historic, built in 1890, after a Venetian palazzo, the Montauk Club. After 7 years of and 20-something odd years of being a member, 7 years of hosting readings there, management after the pandemic decided they wanted to charge me at least $108 an hour. So
that was mean.
I gotta figure out what to do. I mean, I recently actually won some money at the Writer's Digest, 2024 award thing. Actually 3 prizes, and maybe I'll put that towards this and just invite anybody to chip in, because it would be a lovely and has been a lovely venue for it. So anybody who can be within the greater metropolitan area would be fine. Otherwise, we have a movie screen there, and it's just it's exactly the sort of place that should host poetry readings if it wasn't run by a nickel and dime accountant.
Yeah.
More to be, and anybody who is interested actually in getting on our notifications list, just email me at PoetSauce, or just even put it in the chat here, and I'll add you to our notifications list. I mean, sometime I guess we did a September in August hybrid reading, and I guess the next one will be sometime probably mid-September. Something like that, but I'll let you know. So if I don't have your email, and I think I do, but if I don't, just just drop it into the chat or send it to me.
Okay.
You're all welcome.
May I just ask Angela, are there any details yet of Annie's funeral?
No. And Andy, her son, has said that he will let me know, and Paul, who's with us today, one of the neighbours, and is also going to let him know.
I'm here. You can hear me.
Yes, we can, Paul.
Oh, good. I've just been quietly listening since it began, and thanks very much for the invite, and to Angela, because otherwise, without Angela, I wouldn't have known about it. Sorry, I'm not on video. I've been around the house, and also while I've been listening, I have been feeding Annie's cat. Simba, originally his name, but she dubbed him Sinbad. which I thought was great anyway. So he's known as Sinbad now, and he's been fed while we've been there. I've been feeding him while I've been listening to this.
Oh.
But yeah, I'm one of her neighbours, I should say, in Mount Pleasant, and have known her for about just over 12 years. I don't pretend to know any better than anybody else, and there's other people that have lived up here and obviously a lot longer than me. And but I saw her certainly weekly, some daily. You know, she'd come down and chat to me on the doorstep, and I'd go up to her and chat to her there. And I have met Angela a couple of times, and looked after her cats and the strays that have come about over time. But yeah, no, thanks again. I was in tears of laughter listening to the right from the beginning, to be honest, the poetry and the words that Harvey you expressed and shared, and obviously Julianne as well, that's still here. There's 12 of us here now, I think I could see, and everybody else obviously that's contributed. It's been great to hear. But anyway, I just wanted to say who I am, and next time round, this is my first time I've ever used Zoom as well, by the way, so I'm not really genned up with it all, but hopefully this is the first step, and what a brilliant step it is to hear all this about Annie and her tributes to her and everything else, because she was a lovely lady. I'm realising now how great she was with the poetry and the writing, and I saw a lot of this firsthand, and I can see instances and things that she's picked up from everyday life, obviously. You know, she's a wonderful lady. But God bless her. Rest in peace, Annie.
Thank you. And I think we'd all join in that.
Thank you again anyway. Nice to speak to you.
Well,
I'll leave you now.
I will.
If Andy lets either of us know, which I'm sure he will,
yes, of course, yes.
We'll make sure that anyone who is in the UK knows about it.
Yeah, brilliant. Yes, of course, yeah.
Because I know all her poets, if you like.
Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful.
Last time I spoke to Andy, he was waiting to hear from the coroner.
Yeah.
So.
All right, great. Okay. Well, obviously, we'll let each other know when we know any more.
Yeah. I'm glad you could come, Paul. If it was your first Zoom, well done.
Yeah, yeah. Next time we'll get a video sorted out, hopefully.
It's okay. It's a nice picture you're showing.
Yeah.
It's just been on my Facebook for the donkey's years, actually. I'm the one on the left, by the way, not the other one. The other one's Michael Caine. Well, I was lucky enough to meet years ago, but that's another story.
Not a lot of people know that.
No, not a lot of people know that.
Okay.
Well,
right.
I guess.
Good to see everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was lovely seeing you all, hearing you all, and sharing this with you all. So
yeah, thank you for hosting it, Harvey.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. It's
Be
wonderful.
well, everybody, and stay safe.
Yeah. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
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 I did record this, right? Yes, I did. Okay. I guess we are ending.